Colonel, not about me. I will be bringing Brigitte Gabriel to town again next year for another big rally. Maybe Sean Hannity. Glenn Beck's a little busy right now trying to get his Blaze website organized. But here we go, Colonel Mike McAllister running for U.S. Senate, conservative, a man that follows the United States Constitution and is not trying to get elected on lip service. He wants to do what's best for our country, not what's best for him as an individual. Colonel?
Well, I get to follow Lieutenant Colonel Corman, and I get to follow the Chief. Now, what a crowd. I can tell by the conversations that I heard and got a chance to involve in a little bit that you guys are concerned about what's going on in our country, as we should be. And I know we all realize that for too many Americans, they are unaware of the threats that's facing our nation today, both from within and from without. So they asked me to mention a few things today, make a few comments about the global threats that we're facing as a nation, as a state, and what's the role of the U.S. Senate in it. And I guess that's because next year the only statewide race in Florida that you're going to hire someone for is the U.S. Senate. As I look around the crowd, I can see a lot of concerned Americans. I also see a lot of veterans. And I feel fortunate to have been a veteran. As the Chief said, I spent a lot of time in the reserves, the Guard, but also active duty. Got activated after 9/11, found myself back on active duty at U.S. Special Operations Command, but that's where I needed to be. And it was a great honor and a privilege for me. We got to continue this fight to take our country back, and failure is not an option. We got to win. And we are still the greatest planet on the nation, greatest nation on the planet, excuse me. You know, I look at the young military today, we are fortunate, and I'm sure many of you have family members or neighbors or friends that are serving today. And we do, without question, still are the protectors of freedom around the world. And we got to make sure that Washington does everything necessary to provide them everything they need to win in battle. You know, Americans, you hear people say no one likes America anymore. Let me tell you something, and I know you know, Americans never have to go anywhere on this planet and hang their head. This country has saved the world more than once. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired of having a president that stands on foreign soil apologizing to the world for who and what we are. Now, I came from a military family like many of you all did. It was a Navy family. I kind of broke the mold being Army. But my father was one of 3 sons in World War II, just like many of you. So we have a history. His oldest brother was killed at the Battle of Guadalcanal aboard the USS South Dakota. His elder brother had 3 Purple Hearts in the Pacific, and my father served in the Mediterranean. So in our country, we paid a serious price for this freedom, and we've got to protect it. And again, you hear people say, you know, why does America have so much to be proud of? Well, you know what? I remember one time an English gentleman, when once asked by the media, why are you so defensive of the United States, had a very eloquent answer. And he says, perhaps the best way to take measure of a country is how many people want in and how many want out. Now, I got to tell you, any country or enemy or threat that wants to test the will of the American people or the resolve or the spirit, bring it on. We're getting our second breath. We're going to get our house together. We're going to get our business together, and we will be the rightful leadership role among men and nations. Now, this next election for Senate, it's serious business, and you're going to make a hiring decision. And as the Chief said, and as the Lieutenant Colonel said, the U.S. Senate does things nobody else does. And I think it's worthy of just a few moments here to think about that. They are the only body in this country of elected officials that we have that oversees the operations of the President and the Cabinet in many regards. Number one, only the U.S. Senate confirms the full colonels and the generals and the admirals in our military, and that's serious business. These are our senior leaders. These are the ones running the wars for us. And I think if you're going to be deciding who should be a senior military officer, you should have some first-hand experience at what the military does. Only the U.S. Senate confirms our ambassadors and our senior embassy officials. This is our forward presence on the globe. This is the folks that we depend on to look out after our national interest and our vital interest and our national security abroad. Only the U.S. Senate confirms the treaties. And folks, this is serious business, because the treaties are what involves us or commit us in many times with folks that aren't our friends. They confirm the trade agreements that we have around the world, and we look at what's going on. We got countries like China and Brazil breaching our patents and stealing our investment in our technologies, and yet we have trade agreements and treaties with them that don't do anything about it. And for us to go forward and have good paying jobs and to grow our economy, this is a country that has always operated and had a high standard of living because we can invent and make and do things everybody else can't do. Now I know here I'm in an Air Force community. Right down the street you got Tyndall Air Force Base. And just think, I went over there a couple weeks ago because I wanted to see it, the F-22 Raptor. What a platform. World's first supersonic stealth fighter. That's what we're able to do if government will get out of the way and take the handcuffs off. But we got to protect those investments in those technologies because we don't want them coming back at us. Or, excuse me. Or look at NASA. World-class technology at NASA. We got to make sure we protect that. I don't want to see some other country owning NASA. I look at my vision for America as we go forward. We need to be strong, prosperous, safe, proud, and respected around the world for who and what we are. And we've earned it. We got to have strong future economic growth and prosperity. Now, all politicians are going to say, and rightfully so, and I think we all agree, hey, we got to create a better business environment. It's how we pay our bills here. We need tort reform, we need less regulation, and we need lower taxes. We got to get that done. Now, the governor called me Friday night. Excuse me, it's my allergies. And the wind blowing them. And I promised him that I would mention it, but he needs us to call our state senators and our state house members and ask them to get this legislation passed so that we can do a secure border, have lower taxes on our businesses, and not be collecting union dues out of the teacher pay through the government collection process. We look at this global economy, where we have to compete. Now I'm talking global economy, not globalization. I'm not talking Agenda 21. I'm talking about selling our stuff so that we can earn paychecks. We're 5% of the world. We have to compete against everybody, the other 95%. Here's China. China and India are 40% of the world. China now in many ways is our future biggest economic threat. They're the largest manufacturer of goods on the planet, the largest exporter of goods on the planet. They have virtually no patent laws. They steal our technology just like when they walked out of Los Alamos National Laboratory, built with a set of blueprints on how to build an intercontinental ballistic missile. We got to protect ourselves from this. You know, I look at, in Florida, tort reform. We got a lot of people running for office, a lot of people in office, and they all talk tort reform. I don't understand why we don't already have it, since everybody seems to want it. And I think about, our jobs. And what we got to do is we got to get our companies all working together better. That's how we're going to create jobs. It's easy to say, but we can look at successes around the world. Japan's done a pretty good job of that. They have their trading partners. We need to do a better job in our country. If you're in supply channel of your industry, that we have you plugged in going forward towards the end users, towards the manufacturing center. And in distribution, everything that's sold in our country, if it's made here or not made here, the distribution channel should be totally dominated by American companies. And that's another reason we're going to have to watch close with this highway they want to build coming up from the south of the country to the north of our country. We can't allow that. We got to do a better job with education. We got to get rid of the U.S. Department of Education, first of all, and get them out of the way. But we got to clean up our own house. Now, we look at education in Florida, and my son went to school here, so I have a dog in the fight. He couldn't make it through 11th grade because he got bored. We dumbed down education to the point that, so we can pass the schools, that our students aren't graduating knowing what they need to know. And how can I stand up here and say that? I teach college. I see it. We got a huge gap. Florida just dropped to 48th out of 50 states on the standard nationalized college entry exam of ACT. So we got to clean up our own house. We got to get things better, and we got to do a better job versus our global competition, because when you look around the world, the other guys are getting it. Our country is now like 10th in academic school hours per year, where China is now number 1, Korea number 2, Asia number 3. So we got to face that, and we got to do better. When I think about what would I do in the U.S. Senate, number one, I was fortunate enough that part of the time when I wore a uniform was under Ronald Reagan. And he had a philosophy that many of us liked, if not all of us. We win, you lose. I would work for less regulation and fewer laws that restrict business, jobs, and our personal freedom. Now, when we look at what do U.S. senators do, besides the specifics we talked about, they sit on committees. And if you take a look, the committees in the U.S. Senate are very closely aligned in many ways with the cabinet. And again, you all remember we had a cabinet, right, before we had czars? Yeah, it's 39 people that need to go on the unemployment line. I look at what committees would I want to sit on. I'd want to sit on where my accredited education, my professional licenses, or my serious real-world experience gives me the best credentials. I'd want to sit on the Armed Services Committee. I'd want to sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I'd want to sit on the Commerce Committee, and perhaps the Homeland Security Committee. Just for fun, I wouldn't mind sitting on the Judiciary Committee because it doesn't seem like historically we've done a real good job of confirming who should be a federal judge either. We got to secure our borders. And I would never agree to a trade agreement or a treaty with a country that is breaching our patent, harboring terrorists, threatening our national security, not supporting our nation to the world, and not supporting what we are going to have is a very solid anti-illegal immigration policy. Now, folks, if I look going forward, what do we need to pull all this together? And I was fortunate enough. I was a War College grad. They taught it well there. I learned a lot. And they have it right. You got to have a comprehensive and integrated national security policy that's built on the pillars that are going to make it work. We are under attack. We've got to make sure we protect our secrets and our vital interests. And it's got to bring to bear all elements of national power. And those 6 core pillars, number one, we got to have a very solid immigration policy that's fair, but allows for law enforcement to check on the legal status of anyone in this country at any time. That would return those that are here illegally to their home country at their home country's expense, and that it will allow states to protect themselves against people trying to enter illegally. Second, we got to have an energy policy, and we do have to decrease our dependency on foreign oil. Not only is it draining our economy, but many of those dollars are used against us by terrorist organizations. We got to decrease the ban on offshore drilling and improve the technology or use the technology that's available to be sure it's done safely. But I think first of all we got to lift the ban on onshore drilling, because I think we got to drill, baby, drill. And we need to increase our refinery capacity. We need more refineries in our country as well, and I think we need more nuclear. We need an economic policy that cuts spending, and we need a federal balanced budget amendment so that this gets fixed going forward. And we've got to start paying off this $14 trillion debt that's now $50,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. And we got to ensure our future prosperity against global competition by protecting our investments in research and better educating our future generations. And again, the trade agreements that do protect our jobs and our research and our intellectual property. We got to level the playing field in this global economy against countries that cheat with unfair tariffs or trade, or the way they phonily devalue their currencies. Let's leave it at that. And we got to restore free markets so that we can compete against this foreign competition. We got to have a foreign policy in which our U.S. Embassy and our U.S. ambassador teams are formidable and not just political favors, and protects our national interests by executing our U.S. national security policy with foreign countries that we call our allies. And I would have no foreign aid to countries who don't support us to the world in our national security policies. And we got to protect against renegade technology, such as weapons of mass destruction. And we got to have a domestic policy that restores the Constitution as the law of the land, limits union bargaining rights in government, forces employers to prove that their workers are legally here and in the system, and we cannot have Sharia law, courts, or banks in our country.